Good evening, viewers. Welcome and thank you for tuning in to NTN, to the first of a two-part series on domestic violence against women and girls, brought to you by Women on a Mission, Outreach Inc., St. Lucia Campus, in observance of International Women's Day 2019. Women on a Mission Outreach Inc. is a not-for-profit organization and an NGO which has its head office in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, with campuses in Trinidad, Zambia, Honduras, and London. The St. Lucia campus was launched in October 2016 and has since been working in various capacities to improve the lives of women and girls, and by extension, their families and communities. We have a registered membership of about 30 women. Tonight's program is the first of a two-part series on educating and standing with victims of domestic violence, and is under the theme, I'm no longer a slave to fear, I'm speaking out. With us tonight, we have Mrs. Angela Amab, employed with the Ministry of Gender Relations, and she is Holy Spirit driven, sociable, caring, disciplined, industrious, and team-oriented. She is employed with the Ministry of Education, Gender Relations, and it is part of the ministry who empowers women and girls, and also children that are victims of domestic violence. She is clothed with 12 years of experience in that field. She also facilitates at youth and women's seminars at her church. We also have on our esteemed panel, Ms. Janice Eugene, and she is employed with the government of St. Lucia, and she is attached to the New Beginnings Transit Home. And she has been attached with this home since 2010. Prior to this, she worked with the Shelter for Battered Women, the National Workers Union, the St. Lucia Seamen Waterfront, and General Workers Trade Union. She is extremely concerned and passionate about social issues that affect our society today, especially those directly impacting women and children, and those who are most vulnerable and require moral support to make it past their challenges. We also have on the panel Mrs. Sandy Louisy, and she is the first Vice President of Women on a Mission, St. Lucia Campus. And I am Mrs. Charmaine St. Remy, President of Women on a Mission, St. Lucia Campus. Let me also say welcome to our esteemed audience, from whom we hope to get some burning questions during the course of this program. I will now turn you over to my colleague, Mrs. Louisy, who will start off the discussions for this evening.
Good evening, viewers. We are here, as you know, to discuss the topic, domestic violence against women and girls. And even before we go into our meat of the matter, I would like our panelists, Mrs. Eugene, just to tell us a little more about your line of work, what it entails.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. New Beginnings Transit Home is a government agency solely responsible for care and protection of children who are victims of neglect or abuse. Okay, so basically my role at New Beginnings Transit Home is to assist these children in recuperating from whatever abusive situation they may have experienced. Basically, we are seen as the bridge between what is past and what is to be. Okay, so there's a lot of nurturing, educating, supporting, reassuring, reaffirmation, and just helping the children live a normal life, well-balanced, normal life like every other child. Ensuring that the spiritual, social, educational, medical, every need is met.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Amab, tell us a little about your field of work? Just a little.
Okay, so good evening, everyone. Thanks for viewing us, and we hope that you will be most informed at the end of this program. With the work that I do, it's empowering women and children who are victims of domestic violence. Sometimes they feel lost, they feel hopeless, and when they come to us, then we reassure them of life. We help them set goals. We help them achieve the goals that are set. The goals must be achievable, not just blowing in the wind. Sometimes it's short term, sometimes it's long term. So we work with them step by step and with their children. And in some cases, a referral is done with the children to human services where they can further be assisted with counseling.
Thank you. So we're going to go into our questions right now for our panelists. First of all, we'd like to know what the term domestic violence means. If somebody were to ask, what is domestic violence?
Okay. To make it simple, domestic violence can be defined as any form of violence or intimidation, which could come in the form of intimidation or bullying that is leveled against a partner. Okay? Controlling behavior, which can also include physical abuse, emotional abuse, psychological abuse, sexual abuse, and also financial abuse. Okay? Most times, the controlling or domineering partner uses finances to weaken the opponent. So basically, any form of bullying or controlling or intimidating, can be considered domestic abuse.
Okay.
It comes in various forms.
Thank you. Very explicit, yes. Ms. Amab, who would you say can be considered as victims of domestic abuse?
Some people, first thing they would look at are the poor, but there is no special person where domestic abuse can be sent. You have people from all different walks of life, different classes, and they are being abused. The advantage there with those that of the upper class is that they are able sometimes to get private counseling, and we have a lot of masking done in society. Okay? Sometimes even in your workplace, you may find sometimes somebody come and you see they're looking a little despondent and you say, how are you doing today? Oh, I'm good, I'm great. And these are the responses that you sometimes just have to monitor. And if you are close to the person, then you go in gently and perhaps they may open up to you. And when they open up to you, confidentiality is very, very important because that's what saves the day. Somebody would not like to know that they open up to you and then at the end of the day, it's on the media. Then you break their self-esteem, you break trust, and trust has no refill. So once it's gone, that's it. So it's in the poor, different classes, the rich, everybody, all different skin color, races. There is no special person where TV is concerned.
Okay. Having said this, you mentioned that sometimes somebody comes in and you see them looking down. But would you say that what are the triggers that would influence domestic abuse?
The triggers. Okay. Domestic abuse takes place in the home. It's any abuse in the home, be it brother, sister, husband, spouses. But when it comes to the intimate partner abuse, I think that's where we want to go, the intimate partner abuse, because there are all different types of abuse. Even sometimes you have a spouse doesn't want his partner or her partner to work, because the abuse is not only from the male, like some of us would think, it's also from the female as well. Some females are very abusive, so let's weigh the balances and put things in perspective. So you have you would wonder, but why doesn't he want me to work? It's all about control, power and control. In so much so, it's called social abuse. In some cases, he or she doesn't want that spouse to not even go and see their family members. Reason for that is, in the event that that person was physically attacked, then the mark will be shown, questions asked, and you know sensitivity. Sometimes we don't always go to the police. We want to take matters into our own hands, but it's very important to have police intervention. So there is sexual abuse as well. There is psychological abuse and emotional abuse. In most cases, most times I say, boy, the emotional and psychological abuse sometimes is worse than the physical, because the physical is cured after a time. Sometimes the scars vanish, but with the emotional, the scar remains. It remains, and sometimes you have people using all different strategies to try to help. But the thing is, we must learn to break the silence. Break the silence. If somebody comes to you for help, try to open up. I know it's not very easy. It's very challenging because of all the hurt, the shame, the neglect, what is being perpetrated at you. So,
And even the fear too.
and the fear most of all, because in some cases, your life depends on it.
Yeah.
If I may add just a little in supporting Angela,
Yes.
domestic violence is very pervasive, okay? It's a life-threatening crime. The damage that is done to one is life-threatening, okay? It is so intense that if the right treatment or help or support is not available, it could ruin one's entire life. It scars you for life. And you know, it's very prevalent. Among us today, we see a lot of persons who walk. I'm certain we hear a lot about depression. You know, we hear a lot about, you know, suicide. Right. You know, and I don't know if we tend to really think how deep domestic violence actually affects one.
Yes. Thank you for this point.
So in your mind, if I may ask, in your mind, what would you basically admonish persons to look for, the signs to look for when you're, even in the working environment? And I want to go beyond the working environment. I want to also say in the schools, because a lot of it I know happens within the schools. You have children who come to school and we wonder why is it they're not performing the way that we know that they can perform. And we ask the question, they mask it, like you say, they would probably even start bullying children. You would probably find some of them being introverts. And you don't know how to approach them because you try and they shun you away. But what are some of the signs that you could look for, and how would you encourage us to approach it? Because we have to be careful. You cannot be too in their face. You have to respect people's privacy. But what advice you would give us and the public, especially moms and dads and you know, relatives and friends?
Domestic abuse, when you think of domestic abuse and what really triggers it, you have to look at life patterns of life. Most time, persons become a perpetrator was abused, may have been abused some way.
Right.
Okay? They may have experienced some form of abuse in their life at some point. This is what they know. They grew up, their father was battering their mom. Their mom accepted it. Probably it may have seemed very simple, just over asking a question and perhaps the way she answered or didn't answer and he slapped her and figure, you know, there's no big deal, but it is actually domestic abuse. And these little things trigger it. This child who probably was confused, may not understand what is going on and whatever, grows up and is culturized this way, thinking that this is the way it happens, you know, and does not understand, have never gotten anybody to sit with them to basically explain anything to them. They grow up thinking that it is accepted, it is
Right.
normal. And for girls and women, what you find, a lot of them believe that if they're made to believe that if a man doesn't beat them, he doesn't love them. You know, this type of thing. So, you know, we need to be very careful, and in helping those who, how do we speak to them? One of the things that I have come to learn is you never go to them asking why. You know, the why question is always a difficult question,
one.
always challenging.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your contribution. I think we're due for a break at this time. Thank you, viewers. We'll be back shortly.
Imagine being away from home, surrounded by danger and hostility, unable to escape or speak the language, and being exploited. It might sound like fiction, but for 40 million victims of human trafficking worldwide, it is a reality. Innocent people enticed by the promise of a new life, then enslaved into forced labor or sex trafficking. Human trafficking happens in plain sight. Know the signs, see it, report it. To report suspected cases of human trafficking, call the TIP hotline at 847.
Welcome back, viewers. We are discussing the topic, domestic violence against women and girls. And I would just like to share a little of my personal experience. In growing up, I grew up with my mom and my stepdad, and I witnessed domestic violence against my mom almost every day. My mom had to go through this abuse physically, which was the hardest part for me. And it really put an anger in me because I could not help her at the time. But as I grew up, I was very violent towards especially my male friends. When I went to school, I was very aggressive towards them. But I thank God that I got a different approach. I realized that this happening to my mom doesn't have to continue with me. So I purpose in my heart that I would not allow it to keep me back. But it did affect me. My self-esteem was low. And so I have an idea of what women, what young girls go through when they go through domestic abuse or even view it. But I found help. I got help, I got counseling, and help is available out there. So if there's anyone who's going through this, there is help. You need to find help. You need someone that you can speak to. And look at me today. I thank God. So I am an example. We have, I mentioned it, but I would like to hear a little more from you. Can a victim's self-esteem be damaged as a result of the abuse?
Oh, definitely. Definitely.
Can you give us an explanation?
Your sense of self-worth. You feel rejected. You feel there's no hope, you know. Within yourself, you have to really know yourself, and you have to really be a strong-willed person to really speak out, because this is one of the hardest thing for any victim of abuse, to speak out. Because once one has suffered domestic abuse, the level of trust is gone, you know, and speaking out to tell someone is very hard, because most times the abusers are very, very good at intimidating and having and that has a serious psychological impact on any victim. And that not even their parents, they know how to mask it up very well and cover it. You know, the scars may be as huge as they may be, but they know how the face powder that will cover it perfectly, you know, and they'll give you the brightest smile. So you would be seeing it, and you would say, you would actually hear it, and they would tell you, no, I know of a friend who has been through the abuse, And you know, I would sit and even with speaking and what she did constantly was just blame herself. She was the reason, because that is what the abuser does. Everything is because of you. Had you done this, had you done that. So you're constantly putting pressure on yourself, forgetting who you are, pleasing this person, doing everything that he has asked. And every time you try, the list gets longer and longer and longer. There's always something else you didn't do or something you should have done. Okay, so this can be very damning on one, and they can forget who they are, lose their sense of self.
So basically what you're saying is that one of the strategies that the abuser uses is to take away your self-confidence.
That's correct.
Because the moment you start to doubt yourself and start to believe that everything that is happening is as a result of something that either you have done or did not do, whereby even though you're trying to figure out what exactly it is and you cannot find it, but because you are being punished,
Constantly intimidated.
right, and there is the intimidation because right now you don't have that self-confidence, you don't have that ability within yourself to recognize your value and your worth. They have that control.
Yeah, and they constantly say to you, nobody will believe you.
Yes.
No matter where you go, no one will believe you.
Yes.
You know, everybody will believe you lied. No one will believe you. So eventually, this kicks in and you begin to believe it.
Right.
And you actually leave what they say to you. They say, when you go out there, no other man wants you. Who's going to pick you up? You know, these type of things. So, and women actually believe it. And like Angela alluded to earlier, that is where the emotional and psychological abuse, that is the impact, the depth of the emotional and psychological abuse. And women, unfortunately, breaking away from that is really, really hard.
Well, we are hoping that this session will encourage women to recognize that they can break free. And tonight, I pray and I really hope that the answers will be given to women, to girls, and even, I'm going to put it, just say any person who's been abused, whether it be women, whether it be girls, but there are men, like Angela said, there are men that are being abused by women. The verbal abuse is one of the big ones that women do, and it is very unfortunate that society laughs at it.
Yes.
Because, and you know, the song that was there about the Hillary song, so you know, they make it into something that should be acceptable, but it should not be.
Definitely, it's true.
No one should be placed in the position where they feel that they are any less of value than they really are. Because we all know that God created us with worth. And that worth, we should never give it to anybody. Because God gave it to us. And there's a reason why, because He created us in His image and likeness. And that is important, and we hold on to that. And so I just wanted to just put that in, because men too are being abused, and we also need to remember that element of it. So men out there, men and boys, you are not forgotten. We do have you on our hearts also, because you are part of families, you are part of communities. So everything we are saying there pertains to you also.
And there is help. Most importantly, we need those victims to know, and
there.
persons who are suffering silently, because that is one of the major concerns. Persons are suffering in silence. Let them know that there is help available. Help is available, and they need to make use of the various services. Many times we know people speak to not knowing where to go.
Yes.
You know, not knowing where to go, but of course, Angela and myself would know for a very long time. From 2010, the 202 hotline has been available, and it's a free call. Any cell phone, any pay phone, any phone, it is a free call, and there is always someone at the end of the line willing to assist, be it a man, a woman, or a child. There is always someone there at the end of the line willing to assist. Okay.
Can I just ask this? As you brought up the help available, I have a question here, and I was going to ask it towards the end of the program, but I think I will put it forth right now. What guarantee can we give those victims out there who are afraid to come forward? What guarantee of safety can we give? Because that is the thing. There is a fear that if I say anything, it's going to get out. And if it gets out, nobody will be able to help me. This man or this woman is going to come after me, and nobody will be able to help me. Because I'm going to call or I'm going to speak it out, and then I have to now either go back to the situation or I have to walk the streets of Castries. So then at the end of the day, can we tonight give some measure of comfort, some measure of hope to those victims out there who are afraid to come forward? They're afraid to speak out because of the fear of not feeling safe even after they have spoken about it. What is in place? What can you tell them this evening?
Well, the shelter for battered women is available and has been available from 2010, as I indicated. It's not only the hotline, but the shelter is also available. And as far as I know, I don't know or can't recall any situation where anyone who has been at the shelter have been at any risk. You know, I remember as an employee working at the shelter, and you have real high-risk cases, serious cases, and I mean, Angela probably coming after me would not know. The situations you've had to play policewoman and your driver play policeman, you know, to be able to get a woman safe. And I know of situations where you come from one area and the perpetrator is following you, and then when you get to a certain place, the quickest area you could get to and speak to a security, you could change from one government vehicle to another, you know, and when you get to another point, you liaise with the police, you know, your colleagues are on the line, you change vehicles, you disguise, and when you look, the perpetrator has lost their way. They can no longer track you. I know of situations where perpetrators have actually come to the residence, but when they get there, you know, we were smart enough, we were trained. We pretend to be, you know, an agency that deals solely with HIV/AIDS, and this place is quarantined, so you're in the wrong place, you know, and so you really have to be innovative, you have to be creative, you have to use your mind. The only other thing that I can possibly think of is if the victim themselves share the information with someone out there or the perpetrator. And most times, if it happens at all, it would happen because of fear.
Yes, that's the thing. Yeah, they would do that.
You see, the most important thing is support. Without support, the victim returns to the abusive relationship. Okay, the shelter is a place for battered women and children. The 202 hotline, it's a free call, like Janice rightly said. When that victim calls, you don't have to give your name. You could call anonymously, right? And then just state what your problem is, your situation, and then help will be provided. And I don't think they just send the police your way. An intervention, a proper intervention is made, seeking your approval. They don't just put things on you. That's not how it is. Okay, so you always have a choice. Now, in some cases, when the intervention, at that time, some of the women cannot even think straight. So you have to ask questions, you have to help them and probe them. Don't probe too much.
Yes.
But there are some questions that you have to ask, close-ended questions, because sometimes the perpetrator may be right there.
Yes.
So you have to be on the ball, you know, to get that person safe. And if they cannot speak at a time, by the way they answer you, you ask them, can you call another time when the coast is clear? And sometimes when the coast is clear, all they tell you, I'm ready, because they had already state everything for you. And you just send the driver, pick them up at a safe point, and here they come to be assisted. So at the end of the day, it's support, support, support.
Yes. And I want
Even-
to, sorry, break it.
Okay, thank you, ladies. We have a lot of information. We're due for another break. We'll be right back.
What's in the food you're eating? Do you really even know? All the chemicals and hormones used to accelerate their growth. All the artificial flavoring, sweeteners and colors too. We consume and we don't spare a thought for the damage that they'll do. No, think about the children. Think about the children. How will we save them? Chemicals and GMOs are not the solution. Use organic and join revolution.
Excessive agrochemical use, additives, and genetically modified foods are harmful to health and the environment. Join the good food revolution. Grow, buy, and consume organic. A message from Rise St. Lucia and the Ministry of Sustainable Development with funding from the GEF Small Grants Program, UNDP.
The good food revolution.
Welcome back, viewers. We are continuing with our discussion, and we go right back to Angela, who has a little more to add as to help for women out there.
Yes, I was saying earlier, in the case of support, support is very important, and that's something I always stress on. And sometimes you have the family, they are not very supportive. Some family members are not very supportive, especially when you have a single mother with like 5, 6 children. They can only tolerate you for a little while, and then they find it's too much. So in most cases, the woman is unemployed, and she is forced to return to the unhealthy relationship because the man takes care of the children, and sometimes the abuse is never directed at the children, but just the mother. So the mother is like, the children are like, but daddy doesn't do us anything. Why you take us out from there and bring us in this place? A lot of confusion and a lot of anger. So, and it's displaced anger. You have the mother feeling left alone and forsaken, and she don't know what else to do. So I'm just saying, support, support, support.
I just want to add to Angela as well, indicating that there are other services available. You have the likes of the family court. You have the legal aid authority, which is now available, and services are available to victims of DV, domestic violence. Most times, of course, we know the myth with the family court is a woman's court. But we would like to dispel that and let all know that the family court, the services offered at the family court are available to both men and women. You know, the nature of your situation, of everybody's situation differs. And therefore, because it worked in the favor of my sister, does not mean it will work against my brother.
Right.
Okay, so it is important that persons seek help. You realize that there is a problem. You can't help yourself most times, because sometimes you can't even understand why you are doing it. Why is it happening? You know, seek help. There is help available. There are persons willing and ready to help. You place that call. There are also NGOs out there that provide support services, the likes of the Crisis Center. We have now, well, I spoke to Legal Aid. We have, what are they now? Mrs. Sillies, Miss Sillies. You know, there are a number of NGO. And you have Rise St. Lucia Inc. You know, all of these provide support services. At least if you may not, if you did not receive the service, what you were expecting, they would be able to make a proper referral where you would find help. You also have the Vulnerable Persons Unit at the police, of the police force. So of course, there is help available, but I must support Angela again. Support is lacking, because it is one thing for someone to come forward needing help. They're already at the lowest. Emotionally, they are gone. Psychologically, they are crushed. It's just like the wind blowing you. And when you get to this place, everybody can tell you what you need to do, where you need to go, but there is nobody to actually walk you through.
Right.
Yes, yes, yes.
You know. So again, the support is very, very important.
Okay.
Thank you.
And with the family court, like Janice rightly mentioned, there are the different orders that you can file for, the protection order, the interim protection order, the occupation order. So according to your situation, because if you have your own home and then the spouse with you and you want to get them out, you could file for occupancy order. So you will get your place.
Your place. Okay.
Okay. At this time, we'll take an in-audience questions. We have our audience here with us.
My question is, why at the center, what is the longest period that a woman and a child or children can remain? The reason I'm asking is, let's say there is a stipulated period. When they get out there, what if the perpetrator is waiting for their return? And while they're maintains and they have to go to work, does the children go to school? I'm just curious as to, because I mean, I've not experienced domestic abuse, but I have a lot of empathy for persons who do, and I would love to understand more about it. And maybe that way I can assist maybe a friend and tell him exactly what they can do if I notice that they're going through it.
Okay. It's a 6-week period. Life continues. Goes to work, goes to school. They are taken to and from their destination safely. Because remember, it's a safe house. So life continues for them. And there are different programs being done at the place for practical support. And practical support entails employment if they are unemployed. We can help them with employment. They receive food, clothing, shelter, love from us as well. Because I believe in the physiological needs being met. It's not just like giving food and water and stuff, but also love. So we have counseling services available, practical support, help them to get low-income housing. So they do their best at the shelter.
And this is not to say that after the 6 weeks, if they are not ready,
Right.
you're thrown out. No, the shelter throws nobody out.
Okay.
Okay, the shelter works with you where you are at.
Okay.
Okay, so you work with your client, you help them through the process, you take them through, and when they have attained, you know, the state of readiness, you take them through the process. And even when they have left the shelter and they found housing, they are working, the support is still provided. You check on them to make sure that they are okay. Those who may need a little assistance, food assistance and whatever, all of that help is still provided, okay? And prior to the exit from the shelter, they are actually placed is what is called, you have an independent living, where they are actually prepared for the transition. So you're not just, you know, after your time, well, you've reached your time and you just need to go. No, they actually prepared, you work with them. And even when they have settled in their new homes or whatever it is, you continue to work with them until they are able to take it on their own.
I just want to bring one point that just crossed my mind. In some cases, the victims may return to their homes, to the battered relationship. But the important thing there is they leave more empowered. The way they came, they get food, meaning mentally, psychologically, they are clothed so they can return more prepared. Because it's not everybody that has that will, that determination to move on, because it's very challenging for some, especially when you have 6 children and you're unemployed. So some people may say, but ustila, you know our Creole language, tout sao, nom la kafa ustila, but they don't understand. That's why I said support is very important.
I would like to ask a question. I think it was Janice who mentioned that at the home where you've worked, that there have been really serious cases of DV that has taken place in which you've had to deal with, well, the home has had to deal with.
The shelter.
Thanks for the correction, the shelter. Has there been, or is there a collaboration that exists between I would say probably the OECS countries or something like that, whereby if a situation is really extreme, because Janice just spoke to, Angela, sorry, just spoke to them going back because they have nowhere else to go. But what if that situation is really extreme? Is there anything in place whereby this person can be transitioned out of this space, St. Lucia, and get that fresh start? Is there?
Yes, there's that type of collaboration.
Thank you.
And of course, yes, it has happened in the past, not just within the region,
Okay.
but not just within the OECS, but outside of the OECS likewise. And once the need is there, the connections are made, there is support available elsewhere, there is family, and the person can, yes, help is provided, and the family or the woman or the whoever is allowed to transition safely and to live a normal life. Yes,
Okay.
that is available.
So we just use the documentation that we need to prove that there was really abuse,
Right.
and
Yes,
And then the
yes.
person
then
could.
yes.
Yes.
Okay, so that gives some hope to someone
Yes.
who is listening to this program, who feels that my hands are really tied. There is nothing, I don't have the finances, because we spoke about financial abuse. Because if in the situation, whether it be the man or the woman who controls the income, then you find that I cannot go and ask you for money because you want to know why I want it. The groceries have already been purchased and everything like that. Why do you need any monies? And what do I say at the end of the day? Because I need a ticket to leave. So then in those cases, there is the support system whereby these individuals can transition out of and begin afresh. Okay, so that is really great news.
Yes.
And I really hope that persons are really grabbing onto all those support systems that are there and know that you can break free
Yes, from the fear.
from the fear and recognize that you ought no longer to be a slave to your fear and speak out. There's someone listening. There is someone listening.
I wish also to add that when we speak to domestic violence, I know that the stigma associated can be very shameful, but we need the audience, the public, to know that when it comes to domestic violence, there really should be no shame. Domestic violence is everybody's business, and it impacts the entire society.
Yes.
Okay? Be it through the workforce, be it through the education system, be it economically, it impacts the entire society. It has implications for the health sector, it has implications for productivity, it has implications for the education sector, it has implications for society, you know, and it is everybody's business. So domestic violence, really and truly, there should be no shame, and it should be everybody's business. The time that perhaps I would take, or Angela would take, to say, Janice still like Vietnam and whatever, that's the time perhaps you should be helping her understand that there is help,
Right.
and I am willing to help.
Stand with you. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. We're due for another break right here. Thank you, viewers. We'll be right back.
Hypertension is a deadly disease that is common in St. Lucia. We depend on blood pressure monitors to determine if our blood pressure is too high or too low. Should a reading on these measuring devices be incorrect, we are literally putting our lives at risk. Doctors, caregivers, and patients, get your blood pressure meters verified by the St. Lucia Bureau of Standards to ensure the accuracy of measuring devices. Look for a green pass sticker on the blood pressure meter at your next visit to the doctor. The correct reading can mean the difference between life and death.
For more information, contact the St. Lucia Bureau of Standards at 456-0546 or email slbs@candw.lc or visit the website at www.slbs.org.lc. St. Lucia Bureau of Standards, making quality and standards our way of life.
We're back and we're continuing with our discussion on domestic violence. I would like to shift the focus a bit and move to the children. How much does domestic violence affect the children? And how can a child be freed from such tragedy? Any of you?
Domestic violence impacts children more than anybody else. It impacts the children the most. Okay, I am certain. As we went along earlier, you gave an example of the damage, what it did to you, yes, Mrs. Louise. And had you not found help today, most probably, who knows what life would have been for you. Most times, you know, we tend, when we see certain behaviors, we tend not to really speak to the children to understand where they're coming from. And especially when you speak to children who are victims of DV, and you go to them and perhaps you say, but why do you behave this way? Yes. They can't explain to you, you know. But if you sit with them and you engage them and you begin to speak, you will realize that even through drawing or playing, you pick up that this child is in serious trouble.
Yes. Well, for me, I was very withdrawn.
That's the thing.
Because
because some of them just won't speak. And some of them, you'll be speaking to them, but they can't put the puzzles together for you. So they give it to you in pieces, you know. But you must be working with them and understanding them and trying to really get to what it is, as opposed to asking them why. Because when you come with the why questions, most times it sounds kind of like blaming, right? And they are already damaged. They have witnessed this thing, they're feeling hopeless, they don't know what to do, they're confused, and you come in, boy, why are you behaving that way? You know why? It's like blaming them, you know. But as you speak with them, you engage them, then you pick up and you're able to help them. Right. You know, you're better able to understand what exactly is going on. And it is only when this child begins to speak with you. Sometimes they are hungry, but they don't know how to tell you because they too are too ashamed, you know. So they behave bad, they do a lot of things, but it's only when you speak with them, then you realize this child really has a problem at home. You know, this child needs to be fed, you know, and this is how you are able to help them. And there's certain little things, yes, you will see certain little cues, or you may hear things, you know, that their friends may tell you they say, or ways that they behave. You just don't ignore these things. Okay. You monitor them. You know, you always speak with them, and you show that you care. Once they can feel you care, and they win your trust, they will open up.
Yes. And I must say, hats off to teachers. Hats off to teachers, because from the home, that's where the children go, and the teachers observe, and sometimes they inform the parents. I remember in my when I was doing early childhood teaching, and some children used to come to school and say, my mommy was fighting with my daddy last night. You know, the preschoolers, they're just vocal. They will tell you exactly what happened. And then you would wonder, you say, you sure your mommy was fighting? Yes. Or in the middle of a lesson, you're trying to teach, and they just bring a story in. So you have to be very vigilant, and then monitor the situation. And sometimes you go to the parents and then you find out that there is really DV in the home. Now you have the infant and primary, where the children regress. You had an A student has gone down to a C and a D. What happened? What caused it? They can no longer study because there's always noise in the home, so it distracts them. Their focus is elsewhere. Right. They start wetting the beds again. Imagine you have a 10-year-old, 11-year-old wetting the bed. You know, these things are not normal, so you have to monitor and get help. So it weighs a lot on the children. And some of them are shy. They don't have a voice because all they hear is, shut up, shut up. You know, so they just shut down. And that's the worst thing you could ever do to a child, to just shut that child. That's why there are shy people in the world, because they never got a chance to speak. They don't have a voice. So,
So,
yeah.
what do you do when a child brings the idea of abuse to let you know, but when you speak to the parents, they deny it?
Well, you see, the thing is, where a child is concerned, the laws are clear. Okay, once the child has made the report, the one thing you'd never do is to let the child think that you think that they are lying. It must be investigated. Whether the parent deny it or not, it must be investigated. And of course, if it comes to a teacher, it may not be the responsibility of the teacher to investigate. They may pass it on to the counselor, and the responsibility of the counselor then is to liaise with the relevant authorities, because there's the Division of Human Services where, you know, services are available, and the matter can be looked into. You understand? And the child can be helped, the entire family can be helped, and who knows, we've just saved a family. Yeah. Okay, so we never ignore the situation when a child has brought it to our attention.
Okay, we'll have another question from our audience.
What advice do you have for a woman who she knows she has to live the DV situation, she has somewhere to go, and she cannot leave because of a child? When she tries to leave, the child doesn't want to leave the father. What is as you're sitting, what is the first step that you can give to that woman to leave that situation?
That is very ticklish, because it would depend on the age of the child. Because like we indicated earlier, the abusers or the perpetrators, they are very good at controlling to maintain that relationship. And so they will play the children. Okay? So it depends on the age of the child and the situation. Then you would know how to work with the parent and work through the child to be able to help this lady out of the situation.
Okay,
sometimes, you know,
one more thing. As you said, work through the child. I think that's one of the best things to do, because the child understands that the mother is being abused. So, as you said, working through the child may be one of the best steps to start with.
Yes, because you see, the other thing too, like I said, children sometimes do not understand. The parents are going through it, but they've never taken time to explain to the child. So the child feels it's normal. So when mommy want to go, for that you want to run, you know, that type of thing. So unless you've worked with that child to get that child to understand what exactly is happening and that it is unaccepted, you know, and most likely if this child get them to understand, most likely if they remain, they too will become batterers, and the impacts it has for them.
But sometimes if the situation is really out of hand, where the mother's life is at risk, she could leave and return for the child when it's safe. Okay?
Okay, as we're coming to a close of our first session, I just would like to ask you, in 1 minute, can you just give a takeaway to our viewers, something for them to take away from this program?
One thing I would like to leave with our viewers is that you never ignore domestic violence. You never ignore domestic violence. It is a domestic violence situation and you have heard a call, you need to act. The 202 hotline is the easiest way or easiest means available of getting help. So you just call that hotline. There will be somebody on the other line. You let them know what is happening, where it is happening. They will take it from there.
I would like to say to the viewers, there is hope. Don't give up. Even if there is one person that you can speak to, that one person is going to get a door for you to get out of the situation. Yes, like Janice rightly said, the 202 hotline is there. It's a 24-hour service, 24 hours, free on all lines that we have in St. Lucia. You don't have to pay for the call. So you can get help. So don't ignore what you have just heard today, because there is hope for you.
Help is available.
Well, there you have it, viewers. You've heard from our esteemed panelists, Angela and Janice, and I think you've received a wealth of information that I truly hope that you will embrace, you will take it to heart, and you will act upon it. Do not be afraid. I am not saying that the fear isn't real, but do not allow it to cripple you. This is not the end. What you are going through does not have to define the rest of your life. Your circumstance can change. And you've heard the 202 hotline. Pick up the phone, call, and take it from there. If there is someone you could speak to them, and they will be able to guide you, hold your hand, and walk you through. You do not have to be alone in the situation anymore. Help is available. Take hold of it and allow the system to help you change your circumstance. I really do hope and pray that this session has been of help to you, to many out there, and I just want to wish you all the best as you take that step to breaking free and understanding that you no longer have to be a slave to fear, and you could break the silence. So once again, viewers, thank you very much for being with us. Join us again next week for part 2, when we will be speaking on human trafficking. Good night and God bless.